issue of insecurity in this country is getting more crazier as the day goes by. Now we are still battling with the issue of Boko boys, Fulani herdsmen, kidnappers, unknown gunmen, but other bad organizations are still springing up. Now recently, the army raised alarm of the activities and the emergence of new terrorist group in the north called Lakuruwa, and they say they are operating in Sokoto and the environs. And according to the army people, they say that these people are the ones responsible for the unrest in Mali and all that. But according to the army people, they say that they are new. But the people who reside in Sokoto and the environs say Nehigaba, say lie that this terrorist group has been operating since about 6 years. And according to the guest in Arise News, which I'm going to play you the video, he said that these people has been operating for that time, and they are not just operating, they have even launched attack on security personnel in the north. But when he was asked if the army people are lying or not, he said that it depends on the perspective which the army people are saying that they are new. Now I no can know whether when somebody say that this is it and this is actually what it is, who is lying or not. But anyway, sir, I am going to allow you to listen to him and listen to other commentary about this same issue. But as you are listening, make sure you are sharing. Give me a thumbs up and also subscribe to my page for more updates. And I'll be back. Let's go there.
Defense headquarters of Nigeria has confirmed the emergence of a new terrorist group in the northwestern Sokoto state. Although the military has described the Lakurawas, that's the name of the group, as new, residents of the affected communities say they've been around for 6 years. Arise correspondent Suleiman Nasiru has more.
In November 2018, residents of communities in Tangaza and Godu local government areas of Sokoto State raised the alarm over the presence of strange terror groups in their communities. Residents of the two local government areas had alleged that the terror group, who they said came from Mali, were flogging residents, placing levies and taxes, as well as going preaching to the members of the communities. But the then caretaker chairman of Tangaza Local Council, Maidan Mayari, dismissed the allegation while admitting that some persons arrived at local council from the Niger Republic and have helped in pushing back bandits operating in the area. Sokoto State Deputy Governor Idris Mohammed Gobir has expressed concern over the re-emergence of the strange terror group operating in 5 local government areas of the state. He said the terror group are in possession of sophisticated weapons and their presence has escalated the security situation in the state.
Unwholesome activities of bandits affecting some local government areas of the state. And in the midst of that, we are now facing another threat from Lakurawas, whose criminal activities were observed in about 5 local government areas of the state. The group is known to be a faith-based idealist. An assessment carried out indicates that they possess sophisticated weapons, as the threat seems to be expanding. The security authorities are working assiduously to address the emergent threat.
Terror group is reportedly affiliated with jihad factions in Mali and Niger, raising security concern in the northwestern region of the country. The emergence of the group is linked to political instability in Mali and Niger, which has fueled the spread of extremist elements into Nigeria.
My men, members of Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, to put in our best within the context of our mandate to see that we synergize with other security agencies to combat the security menace. This incident that the Deputy Governor has raised, we have already picked it up from our intelligence report, and we are already doing something about it. We are deploying personnel, both undercover as well as uniform personnel, and we are also synergizing with other sister agencies to make sure that we arrest this ugly situation before it turns into something else.
The security situation in the northwest is becoming more complicated. The fear of residents is a possible collaboration between the bandits operating in the region with this faith-based terrorist group. Suleiman Nasser, Arise News.
In the meantime, the new terror group, which you heard about in that report, which operates out of Sokoto and Kebbi states, is said to have attacked Mera town in Augi, local government area of Kebbi state on Friday, killing at least 15 persons. According to local eyewitnesses, the group struck as residents were preparing for Juma prayers on Friday afternoon, making off with at least 100 cattle. The leadership of the Nigerian Army recently confirmed that troops are actively monitoring the presence of a new terror group operating in some areas of Sokoto and Kebbi states. Dr. Kabir Adamu is a security and policy analyst and managing director of Beacon Consulting Limited. He joins me now to share his perspective on this new terror group. Good to have you, Dr. Adamu. Good to see you indeed.
Thank you, Dr. Abati. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, Dr. Adamu, who should we believe? The Defense Headquarters is saying this is a new terror group emerging out of the conflicts in Mali and Niger. But the local residents who are directly affected in Sokoto and Kebbi states are saying that the Lakuruwa have been around for the past 6 years. Who is telling us the truth? Who do we believe? Is this truly a new phase in the war against terror and insurgency?
Dr. Abati, evidence abound that this group has been in existence for about that period, 6 years.
So the military is lying. The military is lying to us.
So it depends on the circumstances that the military mentioned, whether this is a new group or not. Terror groups crisscross and sometimes are not static. Whether this particular instance is a recent crisscrossing, but point I'm making is there have been incidents of attack by this particular group, specifically in Tangaza local government in Sokoto state. Even a simple Google search, when you do that now, it will show you records of instances where this group had attacked, including the security forces in Tangaza local government in Sokoto state. So again, evidence abound that crisscrossing, infiltration of this particular group into Sokoto state is not new. And except if I have the circumstances within which the military made that statement, it will be difficult for me to say whether the military lied or not. But evidence abound that this group has been in existence and has carried out series of attacks within Sokoto state, particularly in Tangaza local government.
But what does he say about, an existing multinational security cooperation network, both on terrorism and, proliferation of small light arms and weapons between Nigeria and the neighboring countries, Niger, Chad, all these countries? Is there a collapse in that multinational joint cooperation within the auspices of not just the United Nations, but also West Africa, that Nigeria has now become a dumping ground for all kinds of terrorists from the north, from Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad?
In simple terms, Dr. Abati, I think it's a failure of Nigeria to fully implement its national counterterrorism strategy. If you would recall, in 2016, that document was published. And that document was meant to provide the roadmap, as it were, for Nigeria to use in preventing terrorism, as it were. We also have a national law on terrorism, the National Prohibition and Prevention of Terrorism Act, I think 2022, through which we now have a coordinator counter-terrorism in the Office of the National Security Advisor. So to that extent, and then of course there is a third document, which is the policy document on countering violent extremism. Now if you put all of that together, they are supposed to provide us with the wherewithal to prevent the spread of terrorism within Nigeria. But in my honest opinion, and based on the analysis I've done, it seems we have concentrated our effort more on the northeast And in doing that, we've abandoned the Northwest, which is a strategic mistake. If you look at the Sahel, I think there is almost a border land of about 1,000 kilometers where Nigeria shares coterminous borders with about 7 states in Nigeria share border with countries in the Sahel, including Niger, Benin Republic, Cameroon, that to an extent all have challenges of terrorism in them. And then if you extend it further into places like Mali, Burkina Faso, and then of course Chad, Mauritania, that all have endemic terrorism challenges with several groups operating in that region, then it would have made a lot of sense for us to also focus on the Northwest so that we prevent occurrences like that of the Lakurawa. Unfortunately, we didn't do that, and we're where we are. The issue is not necessarily one of multilateralism. The multinational joint task force that you referred to, which has its headquarters in Chad, is more focused on a location around the Lake Chad, Borno State, Yobe State, and Adamawa State to an extent. But the Lakurawas are concentrated in the Northwest, Sokoto and Kebbi. So the focus should have been engaging with our neighbors, especially Niger. And then sadly, the coup happened in Niger, and then the missteps that we took, which led to a deterioration of diplomatic relations between Niger and Nigeria, may have opened a corridor that these groups now exploited to continue to crisscross. But the good news is that, courtesy of our Chief of Defense Staff, that corridor has been closed. And so we need to galvanize effort to strengthen the bilateral relationship between us and Niger, as well as the multilateral efforts that ECOWAS, don't forget that ECOWAS also has several protocols on counterterrorism. So strengthen that, so that by strengthening the region, especially approach on counterterrorism, we can also benefit from that. But before we do that, we also need to strengthen our own policies internally. I've mentioned 3 policies that we have, including the law on preventing terrorism, that as of today, I doubt if anyone in government has conducted a monitoring and evaluation process to identify what aspects of that law have we implemented, what aspects haven't we implemented, so that we can learn from that. The counter-terrorism strategy is due for review. It was passed in 2016. Usually, 4 or 5 years it's reviewed, so it's due for a review. If we do an M&E process, we would identify our mistakes, and then in the review, we can implement them. So I think these are the reasons why we're where we are. And the earlier we correct that, I think the sooner we prevent the Northwest from falling into what happened in the Northeast.
Okay, Dr. Adamu, in specific terms, I listened to you very carefully, but in specific terms, what does this say about the efficiency, the competence of the Department of State Services, the military, the Nigerian Intelligence Agency, that several kilometers of Nigerian border space can be so porous that people can come from anywhere and just cause mayhem and crisscross, to use your expression. How serious is the level of security threat with that level of, I use the word again, of incompetence or perhaps negligence?
Like I mentioned in my last intervention, an M&E process has not been conducted, as far as I know, to determine what we did well, what we didn't do well. And that raises the significant question of accountability within the security sector. Repeatedly, we've discussed this. I think, of course, accountability affects virtually all sectors within the Nigerian state. But I don't think there's anywhere where we increasingly see a lack of accountability like the security sector. Now, because we don't know the details, what we know is that there is a failure, but we don't know whether the failure is one of intelligence or whether it's a failure of the use of intelligence or whether it's a failure of coordination or even a failure of foreign policy, as it were. These are all components that, if an M&E has been conducted through using the KPIs that were developed when the 3 documents that I mentioned were passed, perhaps we would have answers to them. But having said that, it's very, very obvious that the elephant in the room here is the National Assembly. All of these arms within the security sector, the last time I counted them, Dr. Abati, they are 29. And that's even very conservative. If you include those departments that are under the judiciary that have a security component. There are about 36 of them. And now, if we've agreed that they have been inefficient and to have allowed a group that is not supposed to be in Nigeria to enter Nigeria, then why is the parliament not stepping in like we have, or should have in a democratic setting where there is a failure of the executive arm? Then the pressure should come from the legislative arm of government. Sadly, we're not seeing that. And I think it's a responsibility that all of us should take. The media should continue along the line. I've seen in the last few days a lot of conversation around the Lakura, but we should now extend that conversation to make clear demands to the executive arm of government and to the legislative arm of government, so that, again, this is how the Northeast started. If we allow the situation in the Northwest to deteriorate, then sadly, we're going to see a repetition of the cycle that is currently in existence in the Northeast.
Okay, let me ask you another question in relation to this. The defense headquarters, the military, just to use a general term, he's saying that there are ungoverned spaces in the northwest flank. Now, this is not the first time we hear about ungoverned spaces and the breakdown of relations between Nigeria and Niger and Chad. Yeah, we understand that in terms of the geopolitics. But why are those ungoverned spaces still a problem, making it possible for anybody to just come from anywhere in this Sahel to come and cause problems for us in Nigeria?
There are several factors, Dr. Abati. Most of this forest actually belong to the state government. The infamous Sambisa forest, as an example, belongs to the Borno state government. The several other forests that we know exist in the north. I'm currently doing some research work, and I counted about 10 of them that are quite active and vibrant in the northern part of the country, where we know that non-state armed groups, and this could be terrorist groups or the bandit groups, are hibernating in them, and that is where they use to continue their activities. I agree with you that this should not be the case. You can't have another state existing in a sovereign state, because that's exactly what we have, where these ungoverned spaces are being used by terrorist or bandit groups to perpetrate criminal activities with wanton lawlessness. Now, the reasons for this are several. First is weakness of the institutions. Secondly is the porosity of our borders. Third is environmental factors that have allowed a degradation, as it were, of the environment, where government is unable to exercise control. Number 4 is weakness of institutions. We used to have forest guards a couple of years ago, especially in the northern states that were operational. Growing up as a kid, any forest close to our house, if you enter there and attempt to fell a tree, someone will ask you, why are you felling that tree? Because there is some form of presence. Now, all of that is no longer in existence. Now, when President Tinubu came on board, I recall that he attempted to rejuvenate that component of our security architecture. If you recall, I think early this year or late last year, he had a meeting with the governors. And the outcome of that meeting is that this aspect of forest guards should be reactivated. Unfortunately, that hasn't been done. Perhaps it's because of the way the economy is at the moment or some other reasons. But in simple terms, the reasons why we have these ungoverned spaces is a failure of governance, there are environmental factors and possibly economic factors that have led us to where we are at the moment. Now, having said that, there is a lot of technology and a lot of solutions associated with technology that we can use to have surveillance over our forests. We don't have to go back to the forest warden or forest guard policy that we used to have in those days. If we don't have the money or the boots on ground to allow that, we can use technology. So there are several aspects of surveillance technology that we can deploy to allow us to have eyes in those ungoverned spaces, so that even if it's ants that are moving in that forest, we're able to know. And then, of course, with rapid response capabilities, we can deploy in those forests. But beyond that, we can actually convert those forests for economic purposes. I think our governors in the north just need to think a little bit out of the box and be more innovative in terms of their approaches to having eyes and ears in those forests. Of course, there are a few that belongs to the government, the federal government, and so the responsibility for surveillance and for presence in those few ones is a responsibility that should be handled by the federal government.
Well, maybe the governors will come back to us and say that they are only chief security officers in their state, only in name, and that the president of Nigeria has full authority over national security. But the question I really want to ask you, it's a paradox that we confront in this particular matter, which is that we've been told in the report that the people of Sokoto, Kebbi, the entire Northwest, in fact, welcome these people from Niger and Mali and Burkina Faso because they believed that they had good intentions. In fact, these Nigerians in those places trusted or trust these persons who are violating Nigeria's territorial integrity more than the security agencies in Nigeria. Why do you think that is the case?
It's not as simple as that, Dr. Abati. Incidentally, I'm actually from Sokoto State, so this is something that's dear to me and that I know very well.
So you are not on the Lakurawa side?
Definitely not. I'm on the Nigerian side. But on a serious note, just yesterday, the community in Kebbi where the attack occurred on, I think it was on Friday, they actually revolted and attacked the Fulanis in that community, alleging that it was the Fulanis that allowed the Lakurawas to come in. So you can see that the identity crisis that already exists in the north is expanding. We've seen that in Zamfara, we've seen it in Sokoto, we are now seeing it in Kebbi State. It's been managed. I think some normalcy has returned to that location, but a lot of peace-building efforts would need to be done. There are innocent Fulanis, and then there are bad Fulanis, just like there are innocent Hausas and bad Hausas, and just like there are good migrants and bad migrants. So I think we need to, law enforcement, especially in the public space, will need to be enhanced so that the bad elements in all of these ethnic identities are isolated, and then the good ones are allowed to live in peace. Terrorist groups use methods to recruit. One of the methods is incentivization with money. In this very difficult economic circumstance, I don't know about you, Dr. Abati, but a lot of us Nigerians are feeling the effect of the economy at the moment. And there are allegations, not substantiated yet, that about 1 million naira is being used to recruit by this Lakurawa group. And very few people will be given, in our rural communities, will be given 1 million naira that will not feel the urge to accept it and do the bidding of whoever gives them. So again, the responsibility is on the state, is on the authorities to move fast and take action on law enforcement, on public protection, so that the bad elements that are trying to recruit and that are incentivizing either arrested or where we need to do away with them, we do away with them.
Okay, Dr. Adamu, just as we begin to wrap up, let me digress a little. We've been talking about crisis in the Northwest, new terror group in the Northwest. But in the Northeast, there is this report by Red Cross and also Reuters about rape, extrajudicial killings, and all kinds of human rights abuses in the northeastern flank of Nigeria. The armed forces of Nigeria says it is not true, says it has been exonerated, but this is not the first time we would have, the Nigerian military saying we are innocent. I saw a statement by General Tuku Gusau, who is the Director of Defense Information. Now, why do we keep having these issues? Nigeria, army, involved in abortions. Do you have any information about this?
Yes, so the whole issue started in 2022 when Reuters did an investigative journalism and then published its report. And that report was not good, Dr. Abati. I read that report and it sends chills up my spine that mass abortions were being committed in IDP centers and that it was facilitated or even encouraged by the Nigerian military. So what the National Human Rights Commission did is to set up a panel of very eminent persons, a combination of members of our judiciary, civil society organization, and then the report of that panel was released late last week, I think on Friday. Now, what the report did is to exonerate the Nigerian military, to say that based on the evidences and findings of the panel, the Nigerian military did not and was not in any way associated with the so-called mass abortion and other heinous acts that report contained. It also indicated that it invited two organizations whose names had come up in that report by Reuters, and that is the International Committee of the Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders. It went ahead to say, during the course of the investigation, reports had emerged to say that those two organizations were present in the camps and may have additional information of what exactly happened, but that it invited them, but then they failed to honor the invitation. And so the report raised questions regarding the activities of these groups and the need for improved supervision, as it were, within those groups. So in summary, what these two developments, both the allegation and the findings of the panel by the Nigerian National Human Rights Commission, is the need for accountability and probity, especially with regards to the activities of both the state actor, which in this case is the military, and then the non-state actor, which is the international non-governmental organizations. Sometimes where this accountability or probity is not in existence, then you see atrocities like this being committed. It is too early to conclude and say whether those allegations by Reuters are true or not, but several questions have been raised by the report of that panel. And I urge, in particular, the Federal Ministry of Budget and Planning, which is the custodian of all the MOUs, the agreements that we have with our international non-governmental organizations, to wake up to its calling and improve on its accountability elements. Borno State recognized this gap and went ahead to set up at least two structures at the state level to enhance supervision and coordination of humanitarian and development assistance. At the federal level, we need that ministry to do the same thing and enhance the capacity of its department that has responsibility for oversight over the activities of not just the non-governmental organizations, but anyone who is involved in humanitarian and development work in Nigeria. It's unfortunate, and it would be regrettable to have persons who have been displaced, who are victims of the heinous and atrocious activities of groups like the Jamaat al-Ahlisina al-Dawati wal-Jihad and the Islamic State in West Africa province, and then to now be victims of some of the heinous activities that were mentioned in the Reuters report.
You get the point now. Just like I said before, it is very sad to see this thing happening in this country. We are still battling with some. Other ones are still springing up. The economy is biting from the other side. Insecurity is also biting from the other side. And so on and so forth. I just pray that something should be done so that this thing should be put into permanent rest. Because if not, I don't know what will happen going forward. But anyway, share your thought with me on the comment section. And of course, you know the vibe now. Smash that subscribe button, follow, and share for more updates. Because like this, we move.